Back to Washington now, where the White House is hitting back at its critics, saying that President Obama is not to blame for these skyrocketing gas prices that we've been seeing. But in 2008, when he was campaigning for president during a record year of rising gas prices, Mr. Obama then blamed his predecessor. Watch this.
Here in Ohio, you're paying nearly $3.70 a gallon for gas, and that's because it's gone down over the last couple of weeks. 2.5 times what it cost when George Bush took office.
Meanwhile, the national average for a regular gallon of gas right now, $3.90. Let's bring in our great Monday morning panel. Kirsten Powers is a Daily Beast columnist and a Fox News contributor. Justin Sayfie is a former spokesperson for Jeb Bush. Welcome to both of you. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
You know, it felt, good morning. Kirsten, let me start with you. It felt last week as if the president, they had to be feeling pretty good about the economic numbers that we've been seeing. And sort of the energy issue was what they focused on last week. Perhaps that's something that they feel that they're a bit vulnerable on, because people do tend to blame the president, rightly or wrongly, when gas prices head higher. But does this example put him on some tricky ground with this?
Yes, it does, though I don't think the average voter is really going to be thinking that much about what he said about Bush. They're going to be more concerned about the fact that they're feeling the pinch in their wallets from having to pay so much for gas. And, whether they blame the president or not is kind of beside the point. The problem is, as long as you are having to pay so much for gas, you are going to feel more economically strapped than you already do. And a lot of people already feel economically strapped because we're in a very slow turnaround of the economy. So, yes, of course, the White House has to be concerned about this, just as George Bush was concerned about it when gas prices were high under him.
Yeah, it's a very good point that Kirsten makes, Justin. It may not matter who blames who or who even has any ability to change the situation. When prices are on the rise, people tend to punish the president, for better or worse.
Well, and I think, look, rightly so. President Obama has been in office for over 3 years. He may want to argue there are no quick fixes, but what has he actually done to help reduce gas prices, to help increase the supply? His energy policy is a mess. He's prohibited the Keystone Pipeline. He's stopped that decision from taking place until after the election, which makes me very nervous as to what the decision is actually going to be. And we know on his energy policy, he's trying to promote alternative energy with a $500 million loan to Solyndra, which was supported by, which gave money to his campaign, whose corporate executives gave money to his campaign. So, the president is responsible. He needs to take responsibility. He needs to accept responsibility. And finally, his energy secretary in 2008 said they wanted to have European gas prices of $8 to $10 a gallon. He ought to fire Secretary Chu and put in a new energy secretary.
All right. It feels, when you look at this campaign, Kirsten, as if the two big issues domestically are the economy and, gas prices kind of tie into that picture, and then health care. You can imagine quite clearly both of these issues being very front and center when we get to the general election debate season. Let's take a look at what David Plouffe said to Chris Wallace over the weekend with regard to health care and Romney. Listen to this.
As it relates to the Supreme Court, we're confident that it's going to be upheld. You had Democratic and Republican jurists upheld it in lower court decisions, including two very prominent conservative jurists. The mandate is an idea supported by the Heritage Foundation, Newt Gingrich, Bob Dole, most famously kind of the godfather of the mandate, Mitt Romney. So we're confident that it will be upheld.
All right, that was from ABC. Chris Wallace, of course, had a great interview with David Plouffe as well over the weekend, where they covered a lot of this ground. So the fact that he used that phrase in a couple different places, Kirsten, tells me that, that's what they're working on. Romney is the godfather of health care, according to the Obama administration. What do you think?
Well, they know that obviously it's something that's very unpopular among Republican voters. And so I think that they will continue to kind of stick it to him, and pretending that they're giving him credit for it, when in fact I think they're really just trying to stick it to him. However, they're correct. I mean, what he said is correct. This is the mandate is something that was originally a Republican idea. It did come out of the Heritage Foundation. It was supported by Newt Gingrich. It's kind of ridiculous now to watch the same people sit there and scream and yell about it and saying it's unconstitutional. There were two very respected judges in the lower courts who are very conservative justices, including a former Scalia clerk who said it's not unconstitutional at all.
And that decision is now in the hands of those 9 justices. As we know, it gets underway today, so it may be out of the political discussion, at least for the moment. If they do, if they uphold it, or if they decide not to uphold it, Justin, I know it's a big question, but quickly if you can, what's the impact for Romney?
Well, look, it's cute political rhetoric by the Obama campaign to try to characterize Mitt Romney as the godfather of it. But at the end of the day, there are 3 people that foisted this on the American people: Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid. They jammed it down the throat of the American people. Most Americans think the individual mandate's unconstitutional, and Barack Obama is the one who needs to be held responsible for it.
Thank you, guys.
Most do not think that. There's a Washington Times poll today that only 20% of people think the mandate should be struck down.
All right. Well, we've seen numbers all over the place.
They believe it's unconstitutional.
Above 50 numbers as well. So we'll see. As I said, it's up to the 9 justices over the course of this week at least. Thank you so much, Kirsten and Justin.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you
We're
both.
only 40 minutes away from that starting in the
Thanks,
Supreme
Mark.
Court.
It started at 10 o'clock
We're going to
Eastern.
check back in with Shannon in a moment here. Also.